everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Buffy Nake. I'm the Executive Director of the Lowry Foundation. And we own and conserve the historic Eisenhower Chapel. And the chapel serves as kind of Lowry's town hall, and I can't think of a more perfect use and a more perfect way to spend the afternoon than here with you all and our four impressive candidates. I'm not going to talk long, but I just really did want to thank you all for being here, for showing up, for educating yourselves, and for participating. I hope you have a great afternoon. Just a couple of details. There's a restroom in the lobby and 2 restrooms in the back hallway right through this door. Hope you have a great afternoon. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Rosie Hartman. I'm part of the amazing Indivisible 8238. 9 years ago, we decided to focus on action rather than despair. We focused on turning every state and local office blue. We learned an awful lot about some important offices, and one of them was Attorney General. And what we really learned was the Republicans were about almost 2 decades ahead of us in realizing the importance of this office as the first line of defense for democracy. So 8 years ago, we held our very first AG forum. Someone named Joe Salazar, who's very well known at the time politically for his work in the Colorado legislature, and a little bit of an unknown gentleman, Phil Weiser, came and were part of our first AG forum. And I think what's really,
feedback.
Okay. And what was really amazing is we learned a lot about the office, as well as we learned a lot about the candidates. So today we have an opportunity to hear from 4 incredible candidates that all have fighter in their resume, and hopefully will be the front line of defense for us and all of our constitutional rights in Colorado. When we held our very first forum, we were very excited after the results of the primary to put our full force behind the candidate that won the primary, because we cannot take this office for granted. Way, way too much is at stake. So I'm asking all of you to listen very hard and be very involved in this process going forward. You will see that we've got the candidates in what could be a strange order. What I decided to do was use a very scientific method. I and my husband, Dennis, who is a registered independent, draw names out of a hat. And that's how we got the order that we have for tonight. So one of the things I think is really important for us as we kind of look at this is each and every one of these candidates has fighter in their resume. And so let's listen hard and let's learn a lot about them today. So I'm going to give them all a very, very, very brief introduction in the interest of time. And I will ask, we are filming today, so please, if you could, hold back your applause and your bravos and the stomp of your feet to the very, very, very end of our forum. And that would be most appreciated. So I'm going to start with Michael. For nearly 30 years, Michael Dougherty has pursued the mantra, do justice, from serving as the Colorado Deputy Attorney General to leading the sex crime unit at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And now as a 3-time elected district attorney, Michael has successfully prosecuted thousands of cases that impact our daily lives. Next, we have Hetal, who's a practicing attorney for nearly 20 years. As an assistant U.S. attorney for Colorado and later as a deputy assistant attorney general for the Antitrust Division, Hetal prosecuted monopolies, cartels, fraudsters, tammers, and corporate public officials, and won. One of the leading workers' rights, consumer rights, and anti-monopoly lawyers, David Seligman, is a dedicated legal career to fighting for regular people against corporate abuse He is the Executive Director of Towards Justice, a nationally recognized nonprofit legal and labor rights organization. Jena Griswold has been elected to 2 terms as our Colorado Secretary of State. In her first term, she was the youngest Secretary of State in the country. She has successfully fought for our voting rights and expanded voter access. She spearheaded legislation to criminalize threats to election workers and take the electoral schemes, ban guns near voting, and increase penalties for those who compromise voting equipment. There is one promise you will see on each and every one of their websites, and that is to protect Coloradans for Trump 2.0. The candidates have seen the agenda, they've seen the questions. They have 3 minutes for each one of the questions. We'll do a rotation going left to right, then right to left on the other one. We ask that the candidates respect the time limit, which is 3 minutes, and we have some timers to help you with signs in the front. Please respect the 3 minutes. Do not have Beth stand up and use her very loud protest voice and scream times up, okay? Okay. Let's start with our first question. Contrary to popular belief by our current president, affordability is the top of mind for Coloradans, especially our younger voters. The average price of a single-family home rose 111% from 2015 to 2025. Since 2019, grocery prices are up 25%. Health care costs in Colorado have surged significantly over the last decades to an overall rising rate of 139% from 2013 to 2022, driven by skyrocketing prescription drug costs. They're up 151%. What actions can the AG office implement to help our state's consumers? Michael, we'll start with you.
Good afternoon, Indivisible 80238, and thank you so much to the organizers for bringing us here. Can you join me in giving them a round of applause? I'm Michael Dougherty. I'm the District Attorney for Boulder County, candidate for Attorney General, and let's face it, Colorado's become too expensive for Colorado families and for workers, and people are being squeezed every single day. And contrary to what the President says, and I'm going to be contrary to most of what he says, but contrary to what he says, it is no longer affordable for people to raise kids in Colorado and buy homes in Colorado, or to pay rent. And people are struggling to put food on the table. And it's an issue that I'm passionate about, and as your next Attorney General, I am deeply committed to getting it fixed. We can do better, we must do better, I promise you we will do better. I'm the grandson of Irish immigrants. All 4 of them came over on the boat with nothing but the shirts on their backs because of the freedoms and opportunities offered to them in this country at that time. I went to community college coming out of high school. My family didn't have much money. I loaded trucks at UPS at night to put myself through school. I've seen families struggle, and I know what that means. And as a prosecutor throughout my career, I've seen people who are disadvantaged and taken advantage of and made more vulnerable because of it. And quite frankly, we need to change the dynamic, we need to change the vision, we need to change the priorities in the state of Colorado and stop putting profit over people. Stop putting corporations first and people last. That's never how I've operated. And as your Attorney General, I'm going to fight against that. It's why I stand strong in support of the Worker Protection Act. It's why Governor Polish never vetoed the Worker Protection Act. We need to strengthen unions, not weaken them. I come from a state and from a city and from a family where being a member of a union was a source of pride and strength and support. And while loading trucks at UPS, I was a member of the Teamsters. So I know how important it is to have those union protections in your job. It's why in 2019 I helped lead an effort on behalf of the district attorneys to get a wage theft bill passed, which David's organization Towards Justice gave me an award, and I was very honored to receive it, because I was fighting for workers. The AG could play a role in breaking up antitrust actions, King Soopers and Safeway. That merger was stopped by the Attorney General. The Attorney General, under my leadership, that office will stop people from going after the affordable housing bills that have been passed in Colorado. I also brought the first of its kind civil action against an unscrupulous realty company that was ripping off tenants in northern Colorado. Phil Weiser and I teamed up together on that. We got a $1 million settlement for all the victims. That's what it means to stand and fight for workers, and that's what we have to do. But it also requires leadership that recognizes we need to do much better. And in Colorado, families are struggling deeply right now all across the state. When I ask people around the state of Colorado, what's the top concern you have? More than anything, I hear affordability. I can't afford to live here. As your Attorney General, I'm going to get it fixed. My time's up, and I'm not going to get yelled at, so thank you so much.
Sorry, trial lawyer habits die hard. I wanted to come over here. Hi, everyone. I'm Hetal Doshi. It is a real honor and a privilege to be here. I am the proud daughter of 2 immigrants. I proudly wear this pin which says "Immigrants Make America Great." I hope you support me in that. First generation American, and I will tell you that my name has presented some challenges on the campaign trail. I'm going to tell you a funny story about that first, but let's talk about affordability now. Now, most of you in this room have probably never heard my name before, and I want to tell you why. The reason for that is because I have spent the last 20 years as a practicing lawyer, nearly 11 of which I was at the Department of Justice, right here in Denver, Colorado. I did public corruption work, civil rights work, and I also was a prosecutor of white-collar crime. So you are looking at the lead prosecutor against Credit Suisse and HSBC for their role in the 2008 global financial crisis that ravaged our housing market here in Colorado. I recovered billions of dollars with a B for the American people and the public fisc and brought consumer relief to folks here in Colorado. Now, the affordability crisis, I agree wholeheartedly with Michael, is existential. I think the president's got it wrong. I think his polling numbers show that. But I think it's not just a question of saying the right things about affordability, it's about showing up with the right record. And so at the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration, the Biden-Harris administration team selected me to be the country's top antitrust litigator for all of the actions that the Department of Justice is going to file, both civilly and criminally, to protect our markets. What does that have to do with affordability? Well, that means that when I brought actions to block mergers that would have made housing more expensive, that would have made our groceries and travel more expensive, that's actually proof of concept of what the Attorney General can do in terms of using laws to fight the affordability crisis. Often people think about affordability and the way that we achieve meaningful reform in this space through a policy perspective. This is the governor's job. I am here to tell you, though, that in fact, the Attorney General has the tools and toolkit to make sure that wrongdoers are held to account in the ways that they corrupt our market and steal from us. It is my personal life story that I grew up in a very working class family where I was a born fighter and a born negotiator because I had to be. I brought that fight to my role at DOJ when I led the prosecutions against Google, against Apple, against Ticketmaster. I am the only candidate in this field that has successfully blocked mergers that would have made groceries more expensive and made our labor costs go down. And so what I will tell you with respect to affordability is that what you should expect from your next Attorney General is someone who understands that the affordability crisis is fueled by 2 things: wages that are going down to historic levels and prices that are going up. I am the one prosecutor in this race that has addressed both sides of that equation in ways that have been history-making, and I intend to do that again as Colorado's next Attorney General.
Hi everybody, David Seligman, workers' rights, civil rights, consumer protection lawyer, executive director of the legal nonprofit Towards Justice, and I'm the father of 3 little girls. Look, here's what I gotta tell you about the affordability crisis. It's an accountability crisis, right? The forces of wealth and power are stealing from us, and they are getting away with it. And that's why the Attorney General is going to be the tip of the spear, not just in combating Trumpism, but in fighting for a better world than what came before. As your next Attorney General, I'll be standing on Phil Weiser's shoulders in building big, bold, innovative cases to take on the corporate power that is squeezing us dry. That's been my life's work. That's what I do, not just a resume line. That's who I am. I'm fighting right now on behalf of tens of thousands of renters from the largest corporate landlord in the country, Graystar. I see some of them here, right? My clients. Fighting back against junk fees, $100 a month, $200 a month. We're standing up in court now for hundreds of thousands of Coloradans, drowning in medical debt to billion-dollar hospital systems like UC Health. Drowning in medical debt in one of the wealthiest states in the wealthiest country in the history of the world when there are 100 billionaires who own homes in Aspen. It is totally absurd. I'm standing up in the legislature, taking on big fights against lobbyists paid $1 million a year to go after the AI companies and the algorithms that are jacking up our prices and driving down our wages. You know, in Colorado, we're the only state in the country where you can see how much of what you pay to Uber and Lyft is paid out to the drivers. Have you noticed that? That's our work. That's my work, right? Because we want to make sure here that big tech companies can't hide behind algorithms to steal from us. And this isn't only about what we're paying, it's also about the fact that workers aren't earning their fair share of the corporate profits that they're generating for billionaires. We brought some of the biggest and boldest cases in the country to go after corporate union busting by Amazon, by Uber, to go after the fine print traps that keep workers stuck in jobs so they don't have the leverage to go and work somewhere else where they can be paid more and treated better. Those legal theories, the cases that we've brought, they have spurred not only justice in our cases where we've won, but they spurred legal actions across the country on behalf of, brought by attorneys general in Washington, in Massachusetts, right here in Colorado. Cases brought by the Worker Protection Unit that was formed in the Attorney General's office based on legislation that I drafted and fought for. That's the work that we can do in the Attorney General's office, to use the law boldly and courageously to take on corporate union busting, to go after the private equity that's turning the most basic things in our lives into investment opportunities for billionaires. We can fight for a better future right here. Oh, was that not? That was 30 seconds there. Okay, all right. I was like, gotta sit down. Fundamentally, we need to hold accountable all of those that are stealing the American dream from us. We really can. We can take on Donald Trump. We can build a new deal in this country. And the Attorney General's going to be the tip of the spear in making it happen. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jena, Griswold, Colorado Secretary of State. And I've had the opportunity to travel all across the state, and so many people do talk about affordability. And it's not just young Coloradans, it's seniors, it's people starting a family. Prices are just way too high on a lot of essentials. And what we're seeing is two Colorados. A Colorado for the wealthy, and a Colorado for the rest of us. And I want to tell you very specifically what I will do to protect consumers as Attorney General. First, let's talk about energy. Have any of you filled up your gas tank today? 50 to 60 cents higher. We are seeing huge drastic spikes, and we need to make sure the energy sector is actually affordable for Coloradans. That means making sure Excel and Black Hills are not putting costs on all of you as they build more infrastructure. That means that we actually invest in the clean energy future to lower costs. And again, as new AI data centers go up, the costs aren't put on you guys as corporations reap the rewards in billions and billions of dollars. Second, on housing. The next AG needs to be focused both on the rental market and the home buyer market. I will absolutely make sure that corporate landlords are not colluding to jack up the price on rental housing for people who live in rental housing, or put illegal junk fees, which folks pay month after month. Just as important, it's really important that we make sure that home builders are not artificially inflating the costs for first-time house buyers. Now, when it comes to other essentials, food, childcare, your medicine, the Attorney General has the power to investigate, to make sure that these big corporations are following the law. That means making sure that corporate grocery stores aren't price fixing, making sure that manufacturers aren't charging you the same amount for less product, making sure that medical providers are obeying our special, sorry, I just got thrown by the minute, about our laws on no surprise billing. And you'll hear all of us saying we're going to protect consumers, but let me tell you, for me, it's not a talking point. I grew up in rural Colorado on food stamps. I'm first in my family to go to a four-year college. I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania Law School and started my career practicing international anti-corruption law, and have been able to protect and dedicate my career to protecting our voting rights and democracy for the last decade, nearly. I still have $200,000 in debt. When I say I'm going to protect you guys and protect Colorado consumers, I'm talking about my mom, I'm talking about my cousins, and I'm talking about people who grew up like me. I am proud to have the endorsement of nearly every single union who is engaged in this race. I will always stand with the middle class and with workers. Thank you.
So let's move to question 2. In the upcoming midterm elections, we may see efforts to abridge individual voters' rights, disruption of voting and counting, and challenges to election certification. What will you do to protect voting rights and the integrity of our election results in Colorado? Hetal, will you take first?
Happy to. So let's take a step back to understand that the premise of the question is exactly right. Donald Trump hasn't made it a secret that the way that he's going to preserve his power is not to win on the merits, whether it's on affordability or anything else, but it's to cheat, to lie, cheat, and steal. And it doesn't matter to him that the Constitution says that the state of Colorado gets to decide how we conduct our elections, because he thinks that if he can get his cronies in line in Congress, that they can, whether it's through legislation or other actions, take last-minute action to steal the 2026 elections. We will not let that happen. The ways that we're not going to let that happen, and this comes to you from my time as an election monitor in the Department of Justice. I was selected to be an official monitor to implement consent decrees back in 2016 for the Department of Justice. So my experience on this comes in this particular percipient way, and where I've seen this in action, which is to say, it takes an organized group of people, like this group of people, to hold the federal government accountable in terms of stopping any legislative efforts with respect to stealing our 2026 elections. But second, and even more importantly, it takes administrative and regulatory and also litigation and enforcement action from attorneys generals across the country to make sure that if unconstitutional laws like the SAVE Act somehow get passed, that we say to them, we will see you in court. There is no two ways about the fact that election security and election monitoring are questions that turn not on just the questions of voting rights and the 14th Amendment, but our questions are complicated questions around national security and on cybersecurity. I bring a deep well of expertise in terms of working with federal and state and local law enforcement to make sure that all of the security apparatus is in place so that we don't relive the big lie from 2020 with respect to who actually won our 2026 elections. And so what I would ask you to think about when you're casting your ballot for Attorney General on this particular issue, this being the foundational issue for our democracy in this moment, is this. It's not enough to talk tough with respect to election security. It's not enough to say voting rights are the most important thing. It's who's going to represent you in court where the theater of battle will exist in this moment, and how will they have a plan to win. That's not enough to say there are people that are experts on the ground and I will supervise those experts and they'll take the case to court. We are seeing right now that attorney generals are the tip of the spear, and that means the actual attorney general has to have the expertise to say, this is how we're going to portray the litigation strategy and this is how we're going to win. This is an existential issue, and it is a key issue that you can obviously tell I am deeply passionate about, and I'd be honored to have your support to stand up in court and say, if you come to mess with Colorado, we'll see you in court.
Yeah, they're coming for us, right? It's scary, for sure. And we're going to have to fight back every single step of the way. Agree with my colleague Hetal on this, right? If they try to foist unconstitutional laws on us, we're going to have to fight back. We're going to have to hold them accountable. If they try to come for our election systems, we're going to have to hold them accountable. We're going to have to use all of the levers of the law that we have to do it. I want to talk in particular about some really important tools that we have here in Colorado. One of them is our anti-corruption statutes in Colorado are uniquely broad insofar as they cover corruption committed by federal officials, uniquely broad in that regard. We may have to use those laws to hold accountable federal officials who may try to steal our elections. You know, Donald Trump has effectively absolute immunity for engaging in certain conduct, right? The Supreme Court gave it to him after he tried to meddle in elections down in Georgia. But Stephen Miller doesn't have absolute immunity, right? Tulsi Gabbard doesn't have absolute immunity. We may have to use the laws boldly in ways we haven't before to hold them accountable. And it's not just standing up to the administration, it's all of civil society, right? Because we're going to need to all show up together to save our democracy. I'm really worried about a world right now where the biggest corporations in the world think that by kissing up to the administration, they put themselves on the right side of the law. Because they're going to sell out our democracy in a second for an extra buck for them, right? To get their mergers through, to get the federal investigations against them dismissed. We need to turn that perverse incentive structure on its head So I'd say, if I were Attorney General, I'd say, you try to do the bidding of this administration, to kiss up to them, to bribe them, to acquiesce when they steal our democracy. We're going to take an even harder look at your mergers, right? We're going to pick up the cases that the federal government has dropped. We want to make sure that when those oligarchs are in their boardrooms talking about how they can kiss up to Donald Trump, right, sell out our democracy for their own profit, we want to make sure at least one of them says, but that dude in Colorado tells us he's going to take an even closer look at us. That's absolutely essential. But fundamentally, here's the other thing. I got to tell you, the thing that is going to save this country is the only thing that ever has. The power of ordinary people coming together and fighting for a better and brighter future, right? One of the key ways in which we can make that happen is through the mechanisms of collective action, including labor unions, right? In Minnesota, they pulled off something like a general strike in order to stand up to ICE. But Minnesota has twice the union density of Colorado because our governor vetoed the Worker Protection Act, which would have made it easier for workers to unionize. As I always like to say, I'm done listening to Democrats like the governor say that they're hashtag fighting Donald Trump when they don't want to stand up for power and voice for working people. Thank you.
Trump and MAGA are undoubtedly trying to undermine our elections. As Colorado's chief election officer, it's something that I and my office are working on every single day to shore up the 26 elections. As Colorado's first elected Democratic Secretary of State in 60 years, I've been at the front line of saving and protecting our elections. We've increased access, 70% more drop boxes, guaranteed access on tribal lands and college campuses, automatic voter registration. But I've been there in the hard times too. 2020, Trump tries to steal the election. He then incites the insurrection. That doesn't work. And he doubled down on his lies. We had, after the insurrection, far-right election deniers going county to county, demanding access to voting equipment. And when they were refused, intimidations and threats started. We've actually seen a huge turnover in county clerks because of the threat environment. I knew we had a problem. So I worked with our legislature. We made it a crime to dox or threaten election officials. We made it a crime to have guns where you guys are voting. And then I released millions for the counties to upgrade their security. Shortly after that, Tina Peters made her national debut, and I held her accountable, removing her from her election oversight. There are a lot of people talking about Tina Peters these days. We went in and addressed the first insider threat to elections, public in the country, to make sure there was accountability. You know, at the end of the day, I have been through thick and thin to safeguard our democracy. Just this week, I sent a letter with 8 other secretaries of state demanding that there will be no ICE presence at polls this election cycle. Right now, Trump's DOJ is suing me because I refuse to hand over your voter data. I will always hold the line. And as Attorney General, I will do the exact same thing, but with a different set of tools. Since being Secretary of State, a lot of the battles have been legal battles. In 2020, we sued the Postal Service to make sure they didn't send bad information to Colorado voters. We urged that Trump get disqualified from the ballot. And I told you I'm being sued by his DOJ right now. The next Attorney General will have to work hand in hand with the Secretary of State to take on any MAGA attack for the 2028 elections. I am absolutely the person best posed to do that job. At the end of the day, we are going to continue to protect our democracy. We have to continue to protect our voting rights. It must be the top priority. Our democracy cannot fall in 2026, and it cannot fall in 2028.
I'm running for Attorney General because we're facing the greatest threat to our democracy, and there are 2 things that I cling to. One is the rule of law. It's the best and only defense we have against a lawless Trump administration, and that's why this election matters more than any other. The other thing that I cling to for hope is the power of the people at the election. We can win back the House. We can put something else in place besides the courts. If Congress actually does their job and we win back the House, we'll have them empowered to stand against the Trump administration. That only happens if we save elections. And they're under direct attack and threat right now. And I really appreciate what our moderator said at the start. Do not take for granted that this seat will remain in Democratic hands. The Republicans have put forth a real candidate for Attorney General. We cannot lose this race because we will never have Trump challenged if there's a Republican in the AG's office. And if the Republicans put forth this real candidate, which they have, and he seizes upon issues, he will point to different things. We need to make sure we have an Attorney General like Phil Weiser who's going to fight for our democracy. For example, who held Tina Peters accountable? If you Google it on your phone, you'll see it's Phil Weiser and Dan Rubenstein, the district attorney. They took Tina Peters to court. It was a collaborative effort. But the two of them worked as the prosecutors on the case. The two of them took that case to court, and they both faced death threats for doing so. But they did it because it was the right thing to do. A Democratic AG, Republican district attorney fighting for justice. That's why she's in state prison. And if your governor bows his knee and bends to the pressure, it would be an absolute miscarriage of justice if she's released a single day early. I will not stand for it as the next Attorney General. I have prosecuted election fraud cases. I'm the one candidate who's prosecuted and investigated election fraud cases. The next Attorney General has to be a leader and a lawyer with the experience to stand and fight for justice. And the cases that I've brought include against Democrats, because it means doing justice without fear and without favor. That's absolutely critical right now. And the fight is on for our democracy. When it comes to our elections and the SAVE Act, the law is on our side. The states have the power to run the elections. The states have that power. But we have to win that fight in court. It's not enough to say I'm going to take Donald Trump to court. If we lose those fights, we lose our democracy. We have to win those fights. And that's why legal experience matters so much. And if you're taking Donald Trump to court, it cannot be one's first time walking into a courtroom. For the past 29 years, I've had the honor of standing in front of judges saying, I'm here on behalf of the people. I'd be honored to do that as your next Attorney General. Thank you.
As we stand in solidarity with the people of Minnesota, are there any lessons learned from how their AG actions were taken that we can leverage to rein in any illegal ICE actions in Colorado? David, will you take that first?
Let's be clear, we're seeing illegal ICE actions in Colorado right now, right? People seize off the street because they look Latino, because they speak Spanish, because they work a low-wage job. My clients across Colorado are terrified to call 911. How dangerous is that for all of us? We're going to need to fight back, and there's lots we need to do right now. Some of that work is work that I'm already doing, holding accountable not just Donald Trump, but the private industrial complex that surrounds his immigration detention scheme. We just won a case in the United States Supreme Court, 9-0, a case I've been litigating for more than a decade on behalf of tens of thousands of people detained at the immigration detention facility in Aurora, taking on the Geo Group, the private company that owns it. Right? That's the kind of work that the Attorney General is going to need to take on. If I were Attorney General now, I'd be down at that facility in Aurora where there are hundreds facing extreme threats to their health and safety. A subpoena in my hand, banging on the door, let me in now, right? That fight is going to be a hard one. It may not be one we win, but we have to take it, absolutely. We're also going to need to signal, not just to Donald Trump, but to others, including ICE officers, that they are not above the law. That's why I've been saying for many, many months, before Minnesota, that as the Attorney General, I would prosecute ICE officers who might trample our rights. I was the first Attorney General in the candidate in the country to say it. Before my opponents started saying the same, I think right now we need an Attorney General who sees threats to our democracy before they're on the nightly news. Our campaign also posted a billboard outside the Geo Group detention facility, loudly and clearly proclaiming that ICE is not above state law. They are not. Second, we're going to need to hold accountable those in Colorado who threaten to collaborate with ICE in violation of state law, which prohibits that kind of collaboration. That's also work that I'm already doing. We sued the governor and we won. We stopped him from turning over Coloradans' personal information to ICE. We also served a cease and desist letter on the Garfield County Sheriff, who is seemingly openly collaborating with ICE. We've got the El Paso and Teller County Sheriffs that are suggesting that they're interested in flagrantly violating state law in ways that make all of us unsafe. We're also going to need to stand up to all of the corporate bullies right now who are seizing off the culture of fear, right? Stealing people's wages, denying them safe living conditions, knowing that they're going to be too afraid to stand up to all of that. I see it all the time in my work. As Attorney General, I go on offense. You cannot exploit people in these ways and expect to profit off of it. Absolutely not.
So first I want to address my record to make it very clear. As the Chief Election Officer, I did enforce an order against Tina Peters to remove her from election oversight, and then we worked with Republican county commissioners to remove her as the designated election officer in Mesa County. When we talk about threats for standing up to Tina Peters and Donald Trump, I have received over 3,000 physical threats and death threats. There's actually a gentleman in the audience who came up to me earlier to say that he was on the jury when someone was being prosecuted for threatening my life, and I appreciate your serving on the jury. Now, when it comes to ICE, make no mistake, ICE is terrorizing the country. They are. And for me, I think you're going to hear a lot of the same, perhaps from the folks up here. There are shared values. It is very personal to me to hold the line and have accountability. My husband's Latino, our baby's Latino, my in-laws are Latino, and I worry about this every single day. We are seeing ICE completely abuse their authority. And as Attorney General, there are several things that I absolutely will do. Number one, like David mentioned, prosecute any federal officer who commits a crime. They do not have immunity. Having a badge does not give you immunity from the Constitution. They can and will be held accountable. Number two, making sure that state actors, local law enforcement, state police, do not cooperate with ICE. It is illegal under Colorado law. I will make sure to enforce that law. Number three, God forbid something happens in the state of Colorado like Minnesota. We cannot rely on the federal government to properly investigate these cases in a transparent way. I will ensure there is accountability. I will make sure that these cases are actually investigated to the fullest extent. We need to make sure to hold the line, but also understand that ICE is being used for more than just immigration enforcement. Literally hours after officers killed Alex Preddy, the Trump administration sent a demand to Minnesota for their voter data. Just like Donald Trump is trying to just stomp on everybody's civil rights, he is using ICE to do that also. We absolutely have to have accountability, and I will make sure there's accountability as Attorney General.
I'm passionate about this question because it's a key issue and it's hurting so many people right now. And I'm going to stand and hold ICE accountable. We're going to do that in two ways. There are two things we can do in response to this question. The first is the protections we have in place. The second is the consequences. So protections. It's why since 2018, this isn't a what I will do in the future as AG, this is what I have been doing throughout my career. Since 2018, I've had a DA immigrant protection program in my office, where in all of Boulder County, law enforcement and prosecutors will never ask someone their status in this country. And when we find out, we would never cooperate with ICE, with the federal government. That's been true since 2018. I've been doing Know Your Rights trainings since 2018. And we've ramped them up since Trump 2.0 because the threat is real and people are being killed. And rights are being violated and people are being kidnapped and shipped out of our country without due process. And the fight is definitely on. As a result of my work in fighting for immigrants, I was asked to help with a bill last year to expand immigrant protections in Colorado. And as a result, in Colorado now we have actually far more protections for immigrants than in other states. But they only work if people are aware of those protections and if there are consequences for violating the state law. So the last time I did a Know Your Rights presentation was this morning at 10 a.m. Because those presentations are arming people with knowledge and helping them connect to those that are going to hold ICE responsible when they violate the law. So that's on the protection side. We need to continue building those protections. I want to see us as a state ban ICE from wearing masks. I want to see us stand shoulder to shoulder and ban private prisons in the state of Colorado, at the state level as well. We have two at the state level that should not exist because we're putting for-profit corporations over parts of the justice system. When it comes to holding ICE fully accountable, we all stand and share those same values. That's the type of work I've been doing throughout my entire career. I'm the one candidate who's prosecuted law enforcement successfully. Shortly after 9/11, a police officer at NYPD took vengeance on a Middle Eastern street vendor. I prosecuted that case, his career was over, and he was convicted. Fast forward, right now, as we have this conversation, there are 2 sheriff's deputies from Boulder County who are sitting in state prison because we charged them with killing a young man in their custody, and we prosecuted them. I personally prosecuted an individual who tased a black man at the jail out of anger. Right now, my office is prosecuting a paramedic for killing someone in custody. That's what it means to have a record of being a fighter. I will hold ICE fully accountable. That happens by having investigations, by pushing Congress to require them to wear body-worn cameras, by having independent investigations as we do in the state of Colorado anytime a law enforcement officer uses deadly force. That's the work I've been doing my entire career. The change we need to make in Colorado is give the Attorney General the power, as in other states, to inspect private prisons and bring civil rights actions and criminal charges on behalf of those being held in custody. Thank you.
So I introduced myself by telling you that I am the first-generation American and the proud daughter of 2 immigrants. I wear this brown face and a name, Hetal Doshi, such that I cannot hide on a daily basis from the fact that I and my family and many others like that across America are under attack in this moment. I make a choice every time I walk out of my house to not carry my passport. And I want to tell you that that's an easier choice for me because I have the privilege of a law degree and an education. But I also know that that is a choice that my family members, I'm the first of a lot of things as you might expect in my family, don't get to make in the same way with the same ease because this is Trump's America. I have never run for office before. I have never wanted to run for office. I was happily a working lawyer for 20 years. As I described to you, my work at the Department of Justice was near and dear to my heart. About a year ago, over a year ago, I resigned that position and I watched with horror over the next 90 days while this administration ripped apart the center of gravity for our democracy. And in doing so, attempted to redefine what it means to be an American and to be a patriot in ways that excluded me, my family, and my service to our flag for more than a decade. I am sharing this with you to say, this is profoundly personal. This is my why. We have all talked about all the ways in which we want to hold ICE accountable. What I will say to you in this moment is that for all the talk, for every politician that's out there saying we're going to do it, right? We are continuing to see the horror that we saw unfold in Minnesota in our streets and feeling powerless that we can't stop it. Why is that? It's the reality of the fact that for so long our democracy has hung together on this particular issue with a sense of respect between the state and federal government in terms of policy issues like this one. And suddenly that respect has been blown out of the water. Suddenly Democrats are federalists, right? And so what I would humbly submit to you is that if it was super easy to just say, I'm going to bring the investigation and I'm going to prosecute someone and it would be done, well, I guarantee you Keith Ellison, who is the Attorney General of Minnesota and an extremely talented lawyer, would have done that. What I promise to you, and I will always promise to you as your next Attorney General, is that I will be honest with you, which is to say that this battle to hold ICE accountable is probably one of the hardest battles that we are going to face as a generation. But what I can promise you is that the first time that someone should criminally investigate an official, a federal official, shouldn't be their first day on the job as Attorney General. I am someone who brings that prosecutorial experience to bear. I have put corrupt public officials in jail, and I will do it again. But the problem fundamentally here is not just about ICE, it's about that respect between the state and federal government, and that is the place where I am ready to show up to do business on day one. Thank you.
On our last question, public safety is a top of mind for all members of our community. What new innovative approaches will you bring to the office to address this long-standing concern?
Thanks so much. Let me just first of all say, great amount of water. Oh.
Jena should start.
Oh, Jena's starting. Oh, anyways, you guys got it. I love the amount of water we've been given. It's really very pleasing.
water?
5 stars for water.
Go ahead.
Okay.
All right. Well, I was just very excited about the amount of water. Look, here's what I know about public safety. Many of the forces making us unsafe are doing it by breaking the law while wearing suits, and they're getting away with it. I see this all the time in my work. I want to tell you a story about a conversation that I had on May 10th, 2020, with one of my clients, a meatpacking worker up in Greeley, Colorado. He was telling me that the COVID was worse than we thought it was. And I remember, I'll never forget the sound of his baby coughing in the background. He said, "I think she's got it too. Is she going to die?" Right? That was because his employer, JBS, refused to allow workers to spread out along production lines, because doing so would mean they wouldn't be able to produce as much meat to send to China. We brought the first cases in the country, because the Trump administration wasn't doing anything. We brought the first cases in the country to use public nuisance law, tort law, in new and bold ways to take on those cases. We saved potentially thousands of lives, held accountable meatpacking companies and Amazon and others across the country. That's the kind of bold, visionary lawyering that we need to take on in order to address the safety crises that are causing us all harm. We're doing the same for renters in Colorado right now, where one of our clients has said that her corporate landlord refused to fix the exterior door lock. She's got people coming into her building. This is a private equity-owned corporate landlord. People coming into her building who are committing crimes in the building. She calls the police, and they'll say, "We can come and arrest someone for committing crimes. We can't do anything about your corporate landlord not fixing the exterior door locks." So my organization, we're standing up in court and we're fighting back. The Attorney General can be doing that work and will be doing this work and ought to be doing that work. Fundamentally, there is just so many of these forces that we need to take on in order to protect the safety of Coloradans. So, as another example, Suncor up in North Denver has been polluting our air for years and years and years, making hundreds of people sick. They made $2 billion in profits in a single quarter, and the Pulse administration fined them $2 million, right? The equivalent of a parking ticket for a working family. I said that when I'm Attorney General, we're going to create a new unit, the Environmental Justice and Protection Unit, to go on offense, hold corporate polluters accountable, independent of the governor's office. Fundamentally, building more prison and jail beds will not keep us more safe. It will not, right? But holding corporate powers that are making us unsafe absolutely will. I've also said that I would create a community health and safety fund to make sure that the corporate powers that are making us unsafe, big tech, big oil, big healthcare, that when we hold them accountable, the proceeds from those cases are invested in the things that we know keep us safe. More mental and behavioral health support, substance use treatment, which we are absurdly and dramatically underfunding in Colorado, which is a true public safety crisis. Thank you.
I also like the water. Thank you very much. Well, first off, when we're talking about safety and crime, we should start with the absolute truism that all of us deserve to feel safe in our communities. You should feel safe to raise your family. You should feel safe going grocery shopping. And crime has actually come down since the spike in the pandemic. That's really important to note also. Now, when it comes to crime, there's a lot of times where we don't actually focus on the root cause. And often, when you see people not being able to afford to live in their communities, when you see people having to struggle paycheck to paycheck, you also can see crime increase. One of the key pillars, the key tools that the Attorney General has is consumer protection and antitrust. We are seeing politicians, corporations, and billionaires jack up the price on Coloradans and make life unaffordable. To make sure that we continue to have lower crime rates, we need to make sure that Colorado is a place that people can actually live in. Economic opportunity, feeling good about your outlook in life is something that is really important in the battle against crime. Now, when we're talking about innovation, I think there's two things that I would like to mention. First, making sure that people who are formerly incarcerated have a pathway after they reemerge to daily life. Just like I worked with Leslie Herod on parolee reenfranchisement, we need to make sure that people actually can get jobs. We've seen some innovation. Right here in Denver, R&R Head Labs is a barber shop that specifically hires people as they transition back into daily life. It's a good business for them, it's a good job for folks like that. Second, innovation. Sexual assault. A rape victim should not be scared to come forward. A victim of sexual assault should not be too ashamed to come forward. That's what we see over and over and over in our society. Making sure that we're constantly placing the blame correctly on the actual assaulter is very important. And I look forward to being the first Democratic woman Attorney General to stand up for women and little kids. Now, 2 specific reforms. We need to pass a stronger assault weapons ban in the state of Colorado. That is how we make our communities safer. I was in high school during Columbine. Our state has seen shooting after mass shooting. We have to do something. I'm proud to be endorsed by Tom Sullivan, one of the leading voices in making sure that we have sensible gun reform and we're protecting little kids and grocery shoppers in our state. Number 2, again, the fact that there is a backlog in rape kit testing in the state of Colorado is deplorable. Months and months and months of backlog. And again, I'll say, I look forward to being the first Democratic woman Attorney General to make sure to fix that, to stand with victims of sexual assault, to stand with women, and to stand with families.
I have always and will always fight for community safety and for victims. That's why I'm endorsed by district attorneys and sheriffs all across the state of Colorado. We need communities to be safe and to feel safe, for residents, for kids, for visitors and tourists, and for businesses to thrive in Colorado. I was coming down I-70. I've traveled over 15,000 miles on weekends alone since launching the campaign, because if you're going to be the people's lawyer, it means showing up. I'm coming down I-70, I stop for gas, and I go into the gas station, there's 2 huge guys behind the counter. And I tried something I never tried before. I said, let me ask you a question. I'm running for Attorney General of Colorado. I'm not going to try to sell you on anything. I'm just wondering, what's your greatest concern for our state? And they just stared at me. And I thought, I'm never going to try this question again. And the guy says, crime. I'm like, crime? He's like, yeah, I don't take my kids to Denver anymore. I won't take them to the Rockies game. Because every time I look at the news, I see people getting shot and killed. Now, I don't think he's watching the news channels that capture an actual portrayal of Denver, but he's right to be concerned. And it's not enough to jail and imprison our way out of this. We also have to attack the core issues. When we talk about, the question was what innovative approaches we're going to bring. It's the innovative approaches I've brought as district attorney. Because Colorado ranks in the bottom 10 in mental health being available in the community for those who need it. We rank in the bottom 12 in the nation for substance abuse treatment for those who need it. And those issues flow into the justice system. That's why I started the first mental health diversion program in the state of Colorado in 2018. It's been incredibly successful in connecting people with treatment. A competency court, alternative sentencing facility, a drug diversion program. These are all things we have in place in Boulder County and no additional cost to the taxpayers. And we're going to take it to the state as your next Attorney General. That's what we need to do to improve public safety. But it's also about being thoughtful about how we solve problems. So when it comes to gun violence, for example, it's the vigorous prosecution of cases, which I've done for the last 30 years as a prosecutor, including the King Soopers mass murder, which I prosecuted and tried myself, and securing justice for the victims and the community members. But it's also going to the legislature, not what I'm going to do in the future, but what I've done in fighting for controls on gun access. Extreme risk protection orders, the waiting period, closing the domestic violence loophole, those are all things I helped get passed. But here's the third one. It's the question, what innovative approaches? I launched an effort with nonprofits in Boulder County to raise money to buy gun safes. We now give them out for free to gun owners in Boulder County. We gave out 500 gun safes in 21 minutes a couple weeks ago. 1 safe per person. That's what it means not to be hyper-partisan, but rather to be a problem solver and a fighter for public safety. I'm going to take that gun safe giveaway program statewide. I'd love to talk to you more about this, but my time is up. But I'm deeply committed to public safety. Thank you.
Am I the only one who wished the water were whiskey right now? So let's talk about public public safety. As a former prosecutor, I can tell you I've prosecuted gun offenses. I think it's incredibly important. I think rehabilitation and reentry programs, like Ms. Griswold was talking about, have been around and they are really important. I am someone, here's a hot tip, Costco, if you're not a Costco member, you should be, because they hire felons. They have an incredible reentry program. There are tons and tons of organizations in our city and our state that do this. But let's take a big step back. The reason that I became a white-collar prosecutor, because I was open to the idea and I was interested and I was trying to decide, do I want to be a federal public defender or do I want to be an assistant United States attorney? And I decided to become an assistant United States attorney because I was tired of seeing black and brown people jammed up on every single technicality in terms of crimes and everyone else in our system get a pass. That is fundamentally where the decision point came for me in terms of saying, how do I have the ability to influence that outcome to make it so that the structure of our society is not set up so that poor people and communities of color are set up to fail? The reason I mention this in the context of a public safety question is this. I think that the fact that we started at affordability here today, and we're sort of coming full circle now, is that the root cause of issues that compromise our public safety come from a world in which people don't have economic options to live their lives. And so to address public safety is not just to incarcerate our way out of the problem, but it is to meaningfully invest in the idea of enforcement of the structure, of the white-collar nature of the crimes and the opportunities, so that the rest of the effects in society are felt. That can look like a lot of different things. It can look like making sure that we hold corporate misconduct to account. It can involve making sure that antitrust violations, whether they're civil or criminal, and oh, by the way, I'm the only one in this field who has done both of those, right, are held to account. But it also means that when you have systemic issues that create problems with respect to how our society interacts with the economy such that we have a proclivity towards violence or violent crime, that we have to meaningfully do something about it in an interdisciplinary approach. And so I've heard mention here today about funding for mental health and mental health services, huge driver to violent crime. Here's what the Attorney General, though, can also do about that, right? That's not just putting beds and doctors in prisons and in prison environments to deal with that problem. It's making sure that the corporate consolidation that exists in our healthcare industry writ large is dealt with so that mental health services and treatment are more accessible for people, particularly people of lower means. And so the political taglines on public safety are really easy to land, but the work is really hard to do because it is systemic work. It is work that is rooted fundamentally in our economic opportunities. And without addressing that work, I fear that our safety is illusory at best. And so the next Attorney General, in my opinion, should focus on that structural work.
Okay, well, we're going to move to a very fast lightning round. You have paddles in front of you with yes and no on them. I ask the audience to take a really hard look at them because it's going to be pretty fast and see what they say to these questions.
Make sure you raise your paddles high, please, for fast here.
Okay, are you ready? Number one, do you accept PAC money?
You don't accept labor money?
Individual states have the
That's
authority.
labor
Is
also.
it? Yes.
I don't have to
Does it
consider
include-
yes or no.
If it includes labor money.
Is it corporate PAC or labor?
Both.
Then yes, I accept labor.
Okay. Individual states have the authority to limit corporate political activity and dark money spending because the states determine the power corporations have. Would you support a bill in Colorado that overturns Citizens United? Okay. Have you visited and listened to voters in all Colorado counties? Have you visited and listened to voters in at least 50% of the counties? Have you been involved in cases related to consumer fraud? Have you been involved in cases related to human trafficking? Have you been involved in cases related to protection of labor union rights? Have you been involved in cases related to environmental transgressions? Have you experienced in promoting public safety? Have you managed an office with more than 300 people? Have you and your team, will they be participating in the No Kings Rally on March 28th?
In Pueblo.
Do you support guardrails on the use of AI? today, do you support any type of pardon for Jena Peters by our current governor?
No.
Thank you. Have you ever dreamt of being anything other than a lawyer? And if so, what's your one-word answer? Starting with Jenna. One-word answer.
Oh. Well, do you want me to scream it?
A salsa dancer. That's 2 words.
David?
The PA announcer for the Colorado Rockies.
An elephant conservationist.
U.S. Ambassador to South Korea. There's a story there, there's more than one word.
Thank you for participating in the lightning round. Now I have a closing question for you, and the closing remarks will be, again, 3 minutes, but I'd like you to frame them around this. The AG office has over 700 professionals and covers a wide range of important issues confronting Colorado, from water to criminal justice to consumer protection and constitutional law. As you think about your experiences and qualifications, what will enable you to be an effective leader across this wide range of topics where the department is focused, and what your past leadership sets you up to be successful in taking on this challenge? And Jenna, we'll start with you.
Well, first off, thank you all for coming today. Thank you for having us. We appreciate you all. I appreciate you organizing this. The bottom line is that we're seeing Trump break the law and undermine the Constitution on a nearly daily basis. This is our time to fight back. This is what Indivisible was created for. That's why I'm running for Attorney General. I've been taking on Trump and MAGA extremists repeatedly, and I will not back down now. As Colorado's chief election officer, I've protected the right to vote in our democracy. We've increased access. We've guaranteed access in places never guaranteed before. I'm proud to have the support of chairman and former chairman of the Ute, Mountain Ute, and Southern Ute, because we guaranteed access on tribal lands. And I took on some tough fights. When Tina Peters compromised her voting equipment, we made sure she was removed from election oversight and ultimately held accountable. I've taken on Trump over and over and over, and friends, it is not easy. Last year alone, I received over 1,200 death threats or violent threats. And I am still in this fight because there is so much at stake. As Attorney General, I'm going to make sure to fight so that every kid who grew up like me on food stamps gets a chance at a good education, a chance at a good paying job, and to thrive. I'm going to take on the billionaires, the politicians, and the corporations to make sure that we're protecting our land, air, and water. David mentioned Suncor, a huge corporate polluter. More needs to be done so we have clean air and a clean environment. I'm also going to take on the corporations to stand with workers. I mentioned I am so proud to be endorsed by nearly every union engaged in this race. I plan to staff up a workers' rights unit to make sure that actual attorneys in the AG's office are leaning in on wage theft and illegal union busting. But the question is, how are you the best leader of this office? Look, the Attorney General's office has attracted fabulous attorneys. They are the top attorneys in this country. And it's just not a true description that the Attorney General is in court every day arguing, if ever. What the Attorney General is doing is relying on the expert attorneys in guiding the office, guiding the legal stance of the state of Colorado. I've led the Secretary of State's office through very turbulent times, through times where my staff is repeatedly threatened, and they have stayed put to protect your rights. I'm not just a leader of the Secretary of State's office, I've been a state leader to lead Colorado through these dark times. I plan to do the same exact as Attorney General, to support the staff but make sure we are protecting every single one of your rights. So again, thank you for having me. I would love to have your support. I'm Jena Griswold. Thank you.
Turn it over to David.
Okay.
Look, I haven't managed a large bureaucracy, but let me tell you what I have done. I went to Harvard Harvard Law School, I clerked for federal judges, but I've dedicated every single day of my legal career to standing up in court on behalf of working families. I'm the only person in this race, with lots of respect to the terrific legal experience in this race, I'm the only person in this race who's dedicated their career to representing people, human beings, taking on the bold, big fights on their behalf. We've taken on Amazon and Uber and big tech and big healthcare. I'm representing meat packers and rideshare drivers and teachers and nurses and veterans. We have freed millions of workers from fine print traps. We've recovered nearly $100 million stolen from working people. We've developed the bold, big legal theories that have transformed the law in antitrust, in consumer protection, in workers' rights, theories that have been taken up by attorneys general offices around the country, by the Department of Justice, by the Federal Trade Commission. I'm so proud to have the support of many folks that were formerly in the Biden administration and the National Labor Relations Board and Federal Trade Commission. Look, fundamentally, right now, I think we need a lawyer in this office who understands deeply, in their bones, how the law is so often rigged against ordinary people, and who is ready from day one to take it on, to fight for a better and brighter future. Let me talk about my management experience, right? Haven't managed a massive bureaucracy, as I've said, right? But here's what I have done. I've transformed our scrappy little legal nonprofit into a national powerhouse in the fight for economic justice and for civil rights. That's the kind of scrappy entrepreneurial energy that we need right now, right? Imagine when we've been able to do this, inspiring a team of between 10 and 20, doing it alongside coalitions across the state, passing landmark legislation, coalitions with hundreds of people, right, to pass for example, our landmark farm worker bill of rights here in Colorado, to bring bold, big cases, to win those cases on behalf of ordinary people. Imagine what we can do with an office of 700. I don't have the support of much of the establishment in this race, but I am so proud to have the support of labor unions across Colorado, progressive champions, folks like Senator Julie Gonzalez, former state Senator Morgan Carroll, state party chair, folks, more than half of the House district representatives that represent the city of Denver, city council members, people who have seen it show up in court, show up in the legislature, take on the forces of wealth and power with way more resources than my clients have. Take them on and win. People who know that from day one, I'm ready to put the law on the side of working people, right? To fight for a better and brighter future for all of Colorado. I'd be so, so grateful for your support, participating in the caucus and assembly process. If you're going to assembly this weekend in Denver, would love your support there. Thank you.
Colorado's Attorney General is not just the people's lawyer, but also the top law enforcement officer for the state, leading the state's largest law firm. So I think I mentioned already that in my last job as the Biden-Harris team's top antitrust litigator, I supervised a staff of 800 lawyers and public servants and over a $200 million budget in a transformative era of antitrust and consumer protection experience. I think that to the prompt of this question about why experience matters in this particular moment, you've seen along the stage a lot of answers to how people are their ideas for a forward-looking movement about how to use anti-corruption statutes to hold this administration accountable. I've already done it. To be able to say, hey, we're going to hold corporate landlords to account. You're looking at the lead prosecutor who filed the case against RealPage for using algorithms in their price-fixing mechanism to jack up our rents, right? I mentioned those experiences to tell you that we are at a moment of crisis. I don't have to remind any of us that. But the next Attorney General, when he or she steps into that role, does not have room to learn on the job, to figure it out, to learn how to manage a team, to learn how to work through public service, because it is distinct and different to lead a group of government lawyers up a hill. I will tell you, the 724 people that work in the Attorney General's office choose to be there because they want to make a difference. They could be anywhere else making more money and working probably a lot less than they're working. And that was true before Trump 2.0. So they need a leader in this moment, a leader that isn't just like, I'm setting a vision and you go off and execute. They need a leader that reflects a leadership ethos built for this time. which is I am never going to ask you to do something that I have not done myself before and that I'm not going to be right there with you in the trenches to do it again. That's why experience matters in this particular moment, because experience is what allows the great ideas on this stage to achieve fruition and execution for you. It's what means that if we get an assault weapons ban passed, that it's actually defensible and winnable in court. That's what your next Attorney General's job is, and that's why experience matters. I will tell you that your vote in this particular race is incredibly important, not just because of this experiential question and making sure that you set Colorado up in the best way possible to win in the theater of battle, which is the courtroom right now, but also because it reflects our values and our judgments about this moment and this inflection point for America. It is a thing, as we've all talked about here today, to think about how we define American society and our Colorado society. And that idea matters when we say to Donald Trump that in this moment, as you try to reshape our society and redefine what it means to be a patriot in this moment, that we, the state of Colorado, are picking our top law enforcement officer to hold you accountable as someone who comes from an immigrant background. So this brown woman with this funny name is going to be the one that holds Donald Trump accountable.
The Attorney General of Colorado is the top lawyer for the entire state, the chief law enforcement officer, and experience matters. I am not term limited as district attorney. I could go 6 more years in a job that I love. And I'm not looking for a new job. I'm here for the same reason you're here. Our democracy is hanging in the balance. It is a scary time. Each one of us has to do everything we can with the resources, expertise, and ability we have to stand and fight for our democracy right now. That's why I'm here. And we need a proven fighter and a proven leader to take over the Attorney General's office, because as the moderator said, there's over 700 people working there. So when I came out of law school, I went back to New York City and I worked at the Manhattan DA's office. And I specialized in sex crimes and homicide cases, some of the most difficult and meaningful cases for victims and for prosecutors to go through the justice system and secure justice. I became the deputy chief of the sex crimes unit, overseeing and leading 50 sex crimes prosecutors. From there, I was put in charge of the day-to-day management and leadership of the entire office of 1,300 people. I also importantly met my wife at the Manhattan DA's office, like a Law and Order episode, with some good episodes mixed in. But I learned what it means to be a prosecutor, a fighter, and a leader. That experience matters on day one for our next Attorney General. And I know that because I'm the one candidate who's worked at the Attorney General's office. My wife Antonia and our then 1-year-old twins left Brooklyn, New York, and moved to Colorado so I could work for the Attorney General's office of Colorado. And I was put in charge of an innovative project to identify wrongful convictions in the state of Colorado, and we did. 9 months after I arrived, I was put in charge of the entire criminal section for the Attorney General's office. So I've been at that leadership table, I understand the impact of that office, and I'm passionate about the importance of that office being led by someone with experience and integrity who's going to fight for our democracy. I've handled cases all around the state of Colorado, and for the past 8 years, I've had the great honor of being the district attorney for Boulder County and being a leader for the state on criminal justice reform, but also fighting for justice in the King Soopers mass murder and the Pearl Street firebombing. I'm going to leave here right after we're done because our office is receiving an award for how we responded after the Pearl Street firebombing, which was an anti-Semitic act of terror and hate. But our response was not because we showed up that day hoping to get lucky or relying on other people in the office. The response was because we have the experience that's needed at a time of crisis. And we're living through a crisis in this country right now. And our next Attorney General has to lead. And all of you know this because you've all had jobs. Think about working for a boss who did not know what the job required. The Attorney General is going to be responsible for saying, yes, we have enough to take Donald Trump to court, or no, we don't have enough, and then winning those fights. That's where experience matters. That's what I promised to bring to that office. I'd be honored to have your support. My name is Michael Dougherty. I'm running for Attorney General because our democracy hangs in the balance. Thank you.
Well, now we can give them our very brief because I know, this has been
amazing. But I have a few thank yous, and I wanted to thank the candidates for being here this afternoon. I think everyone would agree that we're very lucky to have such impressive, talented, and really brilliant candidates. My name is Rita Hughes, and I've been part of this 9-year effort with Indivisible 80238. I wanted to thank Rosie for moderating, and her wingman, Charlie Haddix. I don't know if he's here. I'd also like to thank the volunteers who made this all possible, the journalists from Front Porch and from the Colorado Sun. And most of all, to our videographer here, Dan Clark. Thank you for being here. And Buffy, we appreciate your support for letting us use this historic place. Most important though, thank you, all of you, for showing up, for listening, for wanting to learn more about this important office and the candidates who are running for it. Our goal this afternoon has been to provide a fair space for you to hear directly from the candidates. It's not going to answer all our questions, but I hope it helped you better understand the choices before you. The next step is yours. Support your candidate in, this primary process. Vote, and then all get behind our Democratic AG candidate. If you want more information about the Indivisible 80238, you can use our little card. Thank you all for contributing to our venue and filming costs. We live in difficult times, but what matters now is how we show up for one another by listening, asking good questions, and acting on the issues that affect every one of us in our communities. And voting. There's lots of ways to get involved. So I encourage you to, get on our newsletter signups. We've had an explosion of membership, and every effort counts. So thank you for being here today.